Checker.
It's checker for the end, right?
That's the end, yeah.
Oh,
What's the
It must be
initiating?
green. I think it's a green flag.
Hilarious.
I only watched the end.
Well, green flag is a fly-in. We are all set.
Okay.
All right, welcome everybody to the April 23rd, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. We are going to start as normal on our agenda with a thought, a legislative prayer, and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's see, who's absent? Mr. Commissioner Moss and Commissioner Hoth. All right. So I'm going to give the legislative thought and the prayer today. I had written down some thoughts, and I'm just going to read them off. I rattled these off. I dictated them, and then I didn't memorize them, so we're just going to dive in. So people often say that local government moves slowly, and in fairness, that's not entirely wrong. The truth is we move at the pace of doing things carefully, is what I would say, and with intention. Progress isn't always linear, and thoughtful decision-making takes time. It's a bit like a spring in Utah. Or like spring in Utah. You don't, when you think things are moving forward, there's a sudden shift in the weather, right? So unpredictability can be frustrating, but it's part of the process. What we do here may not be dramatic or headline worthy, but it's foundational. The work of shaping a community happens in moments like these, in long meetings and difficult conversations, in the quiet effort to weigh competing priorities, etc. I'd say most people don't know what we do here. They don't know the hours that we spend here. And they're never going to probably know, and that's okay. What matters is that we're building something lasting, the neighborhoods that we want to live in, spaces that reflect our shared values, and growth that feels responsible and not rushed. And so it's a privilege to be part of that work with all of you. So thank you. All right. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Father in heaven, we're very grateful to come together as a body to do the public's work. We ask for thy guidance and blessing as we do so, and say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we have two items on the business agenda. Mr. Eggett, are you on first, or is it Ms. Deweese?
Ms. Deweese on the first one.
Very good. We'll turn the time to you.
All right, thank you. Commission, we are bringing forth an application for a conditional use permit on behalf of TB Electric Moto. The applicant, Reed Packer, has submitted a request for a conditional use permit to expand the operation of TB Electric to include limited repair services as part of their business. This use is conditionally permitted so long as the Planning Commission cannot find facts and findings that oppose the conditional use permit approval requirements per CZC 12.21.100. This type of use, limited repair service, would be done 100% inside of the business and would not encroach on the neighboring properties. The property is located between two residential developments and would be required to have buffering installed. Staff recommends landscape buffering is used as opposed to a more commercial buffering system. No comments have been communicated with staff from the public nor other internal departments. Staff has reviewed the application and communicated with the applicant to ensure that the proper considerations were reviewed per CZC 12.21.100 subsection E, subsection 5, items 1 through 10, as in the packet, have been considered, and it is staff findings that the business would not impact the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. The business must use and meet the city's criteria for zoning, and it does for the zoning that it is in. Mitigation measures outlined in the staff report are appropriate and follow the city code. So, as you guys know, this is how I do my reports. I trust that you guys have read the report, have your thoughts and questions prepared, and that will be all.
Okay, perfect. I think that's great. Does anybody have any thoughts for staff at this time?
So I was just curious, I remember there was like a motorcycle place that we talked about that
couldn't do repairs
Mm-hmm.
specifically? Is there a reason this is different?
Yes.
Okay.
So the other, the other business was in an industrial high. This is in a commercial high.
Okay.
So just because it's the zoning difference, that's what makes it permitted or not permitted.
Okay.
And I think the shoreline conservation area.
Commerce.
Yeah, Shoreline's Commerce Park had some application to that as well. It was a specialized district where we want certain types of uses to operate there, so that overlay would impact that as well.
Okay, additional questions for staff?
Clarification.
Yes.
But it is just e-bike, right? Is that correct?
So there is electric motorbikes. So what that means is that it is a electric bike that it is a motorized, it is an electric motorbike. So that might be something for more clarification on how the actual mechanics work for the applicant.
Okay.
But no testing will be done outside. So the other business that we kind of are referring to, they wanted to do test runs and they wanted to do stuff outside. This would not be any kind of business would be held outside. This is strictly just a storefront for their selling of their electric motor bikes, and they would do limited mechanical work, and that can be something that the applicant explains a little bit better than maybe I can, but it's just like fine tune-ups and modifications, so nothing external. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Last call for staff questions.
Can I just add one note to it?
Yeah.
If you indulge me. The other, I would say, I don't know if benefit's the right word, but the news piece here is that previously this property was being operated as a custom ornamental iron and welding shop. And we've had a lot of different property discussions about this property, a lot of it looking more towards housing. And so it's interesting to find a commercial user in a building that has historically been commercial in kind of a non-traditional commercial area. So we thought that was nice for the city. And we also feel like, as you see in the report, that the sales of the product could be of benefit to the economy of the city. So that is a plus. I just wanted to note that as part of the review.
Okay, so who is here to speak for the applicant?
We both are, Reed's the applicant, but we're business partners.
Why don't you come up to the,
Perfect. Do you, one of you want to be the spokesman, or do you both want to be able to talk? Okay, why don't we have one of you start? Come to the podium, state your name and your address and your position.
I'm Lance Packer, I'm owner, we're partners. I live on 121 South, just in Centerville, just over here, on 400 East, so, yeah, that's your.
I'll lead off, and you're welcome to present anything that you'd like. You've heard what staff's position. Have you read the staff report?
I have, yeah, this document?
Yeah.
Yes,
Did you see the conditions that staff is suggesting that we adopt?
yes.
Do you have any issues with those?
I don't believe so. Is that like the landscaping and zoning things, still that kind of stuff?
Well, let's walk through them real quick. So
Yeah.
buffering measures.
We had a few questions, we didn't quite fully understand exactly, so.
Well, that's what part of what we want to discuss today is if you have any issues with the conditions, we'd like to hear your issues.
Okay.
So the buffering has to go in, well, let me back up. That it can't be, this conditional use wouldn't be transferable. It stays with you and your business. It doesn't go to other places or other, entities, that you have to pass a fire inspection, that you have to put in buffering, that there's no storage outside. Any issues so far with any of those? Okay. No outdoor space will be permitted to store, show, or park bikes for sale. Okay. No vehicle retail sales, associated product sales, and/or limited vehicle repair shall be offered on-site before the installation of approved buffering measures. And then the business operator shall obey all applicable local codes and rules and stuff. And any deviation would mean revocation of this conditional use, which could impact your ability to operate your business. I read through those quickly enough. Do you feel like I fairly summarized those, staff? So the question being is that we as a planning commission, we're just here to make sure that your uses are in compliance with the code and that if we're gonna permit this, that any of the detrimental impacts that we've identified have been mitigated.
Yeah.
And this is staff's recommendation. So it sounds like to me that you don't have much of an issue with these recommendations. Okay. Do you have any other issues with the staff report or any of the recommendations? And if you'll state your name and address, please.
Reed Packer, 778 Windsor Lane in Kaysville. We just had some clarification on like the bushes and trees and stuff, exactly how they go in.
Great. Those questions are not for this forum. That's a great question. It would be directed to staff, but it is for us to tell you that, yes, you would need to put that in or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's just how it works.
Yeah.
But you don't have issues with it being required? Okay, fair enough.
We were thinking about getting a shipping container, putting it along the side of the shop.
We go behind the building on the
East side.
east side. Technically, it's pretty much fully hidden behind the building.
Mhm.
That would be a problem.
It's a great question for staff, and I don't know if you want to answer that now, but there are pretty strict rules about shipping
Yeah,
containers.
unfortunately, that wouldn't work. You'd need to do some kind of actually accessory building and go through that process.
Generally, shipping containers in most urban cities are completely forbidden.
Do you know why that is? I just want to learn, like.
That's I mean, that goes outside the scope of what we're supposed to do here. I'm gonna let staff work with you on that. It's a great question, by the way.
We're just always interested in more.
Yeah.
Storage when we can get.
Oh,
it. We
totally.
have a lot of property that has no use besides.
So, do you have anything else you'd like to tell us before we start opening the floor for questions? More about your business?
I mean, I think we're happy to answer any
Okay,
questions.
I'll open the floor. Questions for the applicant?
I have a whole bunch.
Go ahead, launch in.
All right, I'm launching. Okay, I just want to verify a few things after reading it today. I know that Ms. DeWeese already talked about some things, but with you, I just want to verify. So no outside work, ever, okay? And you're going to do it inside. I just kind of wanted a little more clarification too, what the electric motorbike is. Aren't they loud?
No,
They're
quiet.
really quiet, like an e-bike, no noise?
They're like EV cars.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's still, it makes a little bit of noise with the
Right.
chain moving and stuff, but there's no engine.
Not like,
It's
"Rrrr."
it's a 20th of a gas bike sound or whatever. They're basically silent.
Okay.
If we're talking about being loud, yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of just goes with, the repairs and stuff that we're wanting to, get access to. We're talking about hand tools. Well, we're not talking about air guns or anything that an automotive shop would be using, like no big power tools, no loud stuff. It's like Allen wrenches, used by hand and stuff to install handlebars or tires or things like that.
Okay.
And you're not going to sell them there?
No, we already said.
Oh, cool, okay.
And I have a question, so I'm going to ask it. Hopefully it's appropriate. What are your hours that you're planning on having there?
We don't know exactly, but we are planning for about 10 a.m. to 5 or 6. There
Okay.
won't be any extreme
Okay.
hours, yeah.
All right.
And this is their website? Oh, cool.
And
Because
what,
they already have an online presence. That's part of the reason they're moving into this location, to have a more.
They have
rural-
We've got a full online store. We do over 1,000 orders a month and actually have quite a
Cool.
large
It's a nice
business
a
already.
difference, from the one over here,
Yeah.
if you're looking for something different.
Yeah, we're only electric and they're all
Yes.
small bikes and stuff, and, they're not full-size motos, they're actually about half size. And so, anyway, they kind of look like that. That's us on the picture.
Cool.
that's nice. Okay, and you have enough parking? Are you worried about people coming in a lot? Cars coming in and out a lot?
We don't really know how much reach we're gonna have. We will be a little different than a traditional business that's a direct startup, that they have no idea if they're gonna get one customer a month. I know we will get customers right away because we have promotion and a YouTube channel that will just basically will tell people we're there as soon as we announce it, people will come. So I don't know exactly, but I'm not anticipating that, the 4 or 5 or 6 cars that our parking lot can hold is gonna
let me see what else.
And primarily, I mean, the majority of our business is online.
And then they
so
just come pick it up?
Yeah, like we will have a showroom and we purchased this property ultimately in a main way for the warehouse for our online store. So we'll have a storefront for our local Utah customers and stuff, but I mean, probably 75 to 90% will all be just online packages leaving every day and stuff like that.
Okay. That answers my questions, but I would also like to say that I'm super excited for you guys. I think, yeah, I think it's a great addition to the city.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm ready to buy. Got some boys that need to be
A
entertained.
great business and something that we don't have.
Yeah.
I love it. It encourages more outdoor activity.
Same.
Welcome.
So I have a mixed question for staff. That raises one question. Is there going to be any issue with pickup, delivery, drop-off merchandise? Has that been addressed with the applicant?
Based on the UDOT highway, the capacity, it does allow for that type of use to be permitted. Yes.
Meaning, how are they going to do that? Are they allowed to do it on that roadway or?
So that is a good question.
So here's why I'm headed. For one of my questions is that if this use goes in, is there going to be a detrimental impact to the flow of traffic? Car dealerships, as you know, will sometimes park right smack dab in the middle of the road and then try to offload things. What are you going to do?
I mean, we have a couple of options. We've already had one or two deliveries come there just as we've moved into the warehouse in the last couple of days. And we had one that parked in the middle of Main Street. They weren't blocking traffic because there is a center lane and then the two passing lanes. And they were just unloading one pallet, so they just waited for a gap and rolled it in. I mean, we're not getting semi-truckloads of stuff. I mean, and most of our parts are quite small, so they do go a long way in our space. We also do have the easement road that our building sits on does have enough width to easily fit, even an 18-wheeler can back in and fit and still have traffic drive past it easily. So I don't necessarily think there's going to be a huge impact. I mean, if I thought we really aren't getting 18-wheelers more than a couple times a month.
Okay.
And it's really quite rare. We actually, less than, it really is quite infrequent because we actually, a lot of our distributors are just in Salt Lake, and so we go do pickup orders ourselves. And so we're just taking our truck and putting stuff
Yeah,
in the
and
back.
that's totally fine.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that we're identifying any
Yeah.
concerns. So here's a question. Some roads allow offloading in that manner in the center lane. Some roads do not. What is Centerville's rule for that road?
I don't know of any roads that allow that. It's not.
In Centerville? That's what I would have suspected.
Any road.
Oh.
So in Layton on the west side, they do it.
Well, they do it all the time, but it's not a permitted use
Fair
to
enough.
unload
Salt
in the
Lake
middle of
too.
a right-of-way.
Fair enough.
Happens all the time, and you know how dangerous it is.
Yes.
They do it all the time on 89, and
Yeah.
people are in the right-of-way, they can get ticketed.
So here's where I'm headed towards is, there's that. And then the second one is that traffic gets super heavy, as you know, right down there with the junior hub.
Yeah.
And so my two concerns that aren't identified in the staff report, and I'd be curious about your response, is first, how would you feel if we were to ask you as a condition to ensure that no deliveries are offloaded in the road, but instead are offloaded on site? And then second, that you coordinate with your deliveries so they occur during non-peak driving hours.
Yeah, non-school zone hours.
Non-school zone hours, that's a better one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's totally doable when we're able to, and I don't mean like when I'm capable of doing it, I mean when we're actually able to tell, like when it's an option for us to tell the shipper to do that. I think it's totally an option, and we would rather stuff get delivered earlier in the day too. I mean, it's better for us and better for traffic too, because yeah, you're right, like after lunch it gets crazy over there, especially in and around 3. And to be honest, like, we're not gonna be in that building, like, we're gonna far outgrow the building before we're getting a significant amount of deliveries from a big truck. And I think, I mean, the majority of time, we would rather than back in anyway, and so I think we'll be suggesting that it's still up to the driver at that point, whether they're comfortable, backing a truck in or whatever. But yeah, we're happy to do what we can.
Okay, appreciate your response. Any other further questions as follow-up? Okay, well, thank you, sir. Just have a seat. So we're going to move to what's called the public hearing phase. This is where the public has an opportunity to comment on this application. Any comments?
No comments were given.
Okay, and also seeing nobody else here, I'm going to close the public hearing. Normally, you'd get to respond to any public comments. There weren't any. Does anybody have any follow-up questions to staff about where we're at? And I'll tell you where my head's at. I would like to add a condition about compliance with relevant traffic code, including not offloading in the road, and that offloading occur on site.
And during non-school hours?
Yeah, and that,
Well,
that was my next concern. I could see that it's okay-ish, but I don't know. I'm open to ideas.
I have a couple friends that were big truck drivers, right? You can't always control. You can't say, like you were, to your point, I need it here at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's not always going to
Yeah,
happen.
they're gonna tell you to pound dirt.
Right, that's not going to happen. But you can suggest, right, or hope, but backing in or going forward in or something like that is something that can be requested. And they can be told, well, we're not going to,
Cause yeah, they could come in right here,
you
come
know,
around.
offload in the middle of the street, but it would be optimal to say they can't do it between 7:30 and 3:30, but that's not reality with truck drivers.
Yeah. That was one of my concerns.
Yeah, we do have the.
Hold on, sorry.
To the podium.
I'm happy to take, it technically, that phase is closed, but why don't you come to the mic? Let's hear what you have to say.
I was just gonna say that the majority of the deliveries are done earlier anyway, from what we've seen, like the shipping companies really do like to especially get done before, 1, 2, or 3. It's quite rare to get deliveries that late. I just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts from staff about what in essence I may be proposing, depending on if I make a motion, this additional condition? Any thoughts about that?
So to clarify, the request is only to add the condition regarding deliveries on site at the
Yeah,
moment.
that
Okay.
deliveries be offloaded on the property
Okay.
as opposed to
In the street,
from the roadway.
Yeah, not on the road.
not on Main Street.
I agree with that, yeah.
So I just want to make a note that this street right here that's called Ebbings Lane, that is technically on their property, and they have a access easement for, so if we do say that they can offload on the property, we are allowing them to offload in that street, which is fine, but I just want to make everybody aware that that is what we are okay with. There is an additional entrance and exit for their,
The truck, if they don't wanna back in.
There's not.
There's a gate.
They gated
Yeah.
off
oh,
between
right,
us.
they gated it.
I
Okay.
think that the fire regulations might also prevent someone
That's
parking in
probably a
that
crash gate,
private
isn't it?
lane.
Well, isn't there a road on that property between the two buildings? Right there.
Which
There's
one? This?
a driveway, a
think that's
long,
property.
narrow driveway,
Oh.
right there.
Is that
That they own, yeah.
Yeah, they
that
own that because
where-
they
yeah,
own
That's the
all of that
driveway for that
property.
house.
where deliveries occur?
No, so, should I go over the map?
If you'll zoom in,
Yeah, please.
Sydney, please.
So our property is both of those buildings. The one
Okay, yeah, you're right,
on top,
right there.
That's a house, that's a residential house, and that is just that driveway. The rest, all in between, is just
Oh,
dirt.
that's that driveway.
There is no loop or turnaround point or anything. There is access to the dark black parking lot just off Main Street, and there's another access to the easement street. There is no connecting where you can loop around once you drive into the townhomes. There's a fence between them that you can't see on the map. And so for trucks, like, for a large truck, you basically have two options. One, you can back into the easement because you can't get back out unless you back in. Or, yeah, you park on Main Street. There's not even enough room to pull into our parking lot and get back out.
Right.
It's too tight.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for like an 18-wheeler. If you had like a box truck, they Huey or whatever too.
So they can't back into the dirt area? Why, is there a curb there or
Yeah,
something?
there's no,
Yeah, I mean, there's just no road,
Access.
like, it's just,
I think
Well, I
that-
know exactly where this place is, and,
Yeah, me too.
but that's just not an option for them to,
not really, I mean, there's no, I mean, the entrance is so narrow too on that street or on the driveway up north that trucks would be cutting our curb and going over the grass and like,
Breaking up
it
the
just
right of
things
way.
get weird with a 50-foot.
What do you plan to do with that dirt? Are you-
We're planning to grade it and level it and use it for some, just like,
Test drives?
some extra trailer parking and storage for us and stuff, yeah, just deep in the back of it.
but I'm confused, but that wouldn't work then? For them to,
Not really.
no?
I mean, they'd be cutting,
We also get pallets of stuff out of the trucks.
Yeah.
That would be their bringing it around.
yeah, I mean, it's
Pallet
just,
jack then drive through the dirt.
yeah. Like, so you're talking about, are you talking about a truck pulling in here and coming in here?
I'm just talking about a truck either pulling in or backing into that dirt area between the house and the building. That's not an
I mean, there's
option?
just no way for us to get all of our stuff.
Oh,
in a-
if they
in a
drop it
manner
there?
All the way over to here. This is
Oh,
where it's going.
that's the
That's a
entrance.
house, this is our
Right.
warehouse right here.
Right.
This is where deliveries go.
Okay,
That's not packed dirt, that's like garden dirt, right?
This
Yeah, it's
is,
like garden
this is
soil,
just as
yeah.
far
It's
going
like-
from here, Main
It's
Street
like
to.
tilled up, fluffy, like, I mean, a truck can drive through it, but I'm not gonna put a semi through it.
right.
Yeah.
So that 820 South Road that goes into the condos, if it was delivered there, would that block the road completely from?
No, so
people
that,
coming
yeah,
in?
that's what I
Oh,
was explaining earlier, is that there is plenty of width. I mean, this is a full-size vehicle. There's plenty of width. We've already done it, where a truck backs in and traffic can still easily get out and get past it.
It's interesting, it's a private lane that acts as an easement on their property,
Got it.
which was
So
an issue for the previous owner, believe
it's
it.
not a public road.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
So as a condition, let's just say that they can't offload from public roads.
Yes, that, which would mean Main Street, but then they could use the 820.
use that one.
And if you have issues with the HOA, take it up with the HOA.
So what happens then if a truck comes to make a delivery and they refuse to back in or pull into our
Uh-huh.
area, then what do we do?
That's a
Great
good point.
question. Also, sort of outside the scope of what we can advise you about. I think that's a great question for staff. Yeah. What we would, the limited of, the scope of our authority is to determine whether or not you're meeting the code, whether or not there are detrimental impacts, and if there are ways that we can mitigate those. If you have delivery people that are failing to comply with the requirements we're putting on you, it's probably gonna have to be between you and the drivers. And if it becomes too much of a hassle and the city gets alerted to it, the city will then have to determine whether or not we pull the CUP.
Yeah, it would either impact your CUP and or they would get ticketed.
Okay. I mean, I'm not anticipating it being a big issue because we really get very, very few deliveries.
How many are you getting a week, roughly?
Like one a month, like it's
Oh.
very, very rare.
Okay.
Like, it's very rare that a full-size truck that can't just pull in and get back out.
Yeah, so most of our deliveries are just UPS or FedEx.
Yeah.
Just
Every
perfect.
once in a while, it's a big truck. for,
Yep.
certain things.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, I think that we've arrived.
Yep.
Sound good? Okay, so let's move on to the voting phase. I'm going to start with a motion, if that's okay. I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to approve the conditional use permit request from Reed Packer for a vehicle rental or sale, new limited business use located at parcel 03-002-0227, hereby known as TB Electric, is located at 815 South Main Street, but shall be required to fulfill the following conditions for approval: 1 through 8, plus an additional.
Oh,
It's the wrong address on there.
oh,
Is it
It's a.
815, isn't it?
819?
Good correction.
Yeah.
8-1.
Thank you.
Okay, correction, 819, smart man, thank you. With additional, condition 9, that deliveries not be offloaded from public roads. How's that sound, staff?
I second that.
I've got a first and a second, and for the suggested reasons, A through D in the staff report.
I still second that.
Still second, all right. Let's take a vote starting here, Gary.
Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. So your CUP is approved. Best of luck with your business. Can't wait to see it.
Sorry if my kids bother you on their way to school.
I'm sorry, too.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 2. You're welcome to stick around as long as you wish.
We're done.
Or you can take off.
Or you can take off.
Yeah, they're like, we'd
Don't
rather.
feel like you have to.
Don't feel obligated. Congratulations.
Yeah.
See you soon.
All right, Mr. Eggett?
All right. So this is a continuation, and bear with me as that's civic clerk keeps wanting to drop.
Yeah, you missed that
Doesn't,
one.
not working very well.
This is a continuation of our discussion we held at our last planning commission meeting. I'll give a preface of why we're back here today. The main reason is as we did a presentation to those that were present, there was a reality that 3 planning commissioners were not present, and at the conclusion of the discussion and presentation, thought was to bring it back so that we could give you the same information that the other planning commissioners heard before we determine if we want to take it forward to a planning, like a public hearing and further deliberate on it. So that's the purpose for that. That being said, I will try, I thought about how to do this. I will give a redacted or a shortened experience on what the other planning commissioners had at the last meeting. So if you want the full experience, you can go back and spend even more time watching that meeting. Otherwise, I'll shorten that for you. So that being said, what I did as directed by the planning commission 2 meetings ago was do full research on, actually it might have even been a month and a half ago, on what other cities do as it relates to body art and tattoo. And I looked at 7 municipalities here on the southern Davis area, so Bountiful, Layton, Farmington, Kaysville, North Salt Lake, West Bountiful, and Woods Cross. And that's on the research key document there, Cindy. One more down from that, right there. And what I found was only 2 cities have addressed it. The others, I kind of joked at the last meeting and said they had their heads in the sand. They don't want to talk about it or think about it or look at it. So there's no reference whatsoever to tattoo or body shop in any of those 5 cities that I noted. The other 2 have addressed it. And so going through the survey of what I found, looking first at Bountiful, the Bountiful definition of tattoo, they have added body art, which is interesting. It's tattoo parlor and body art establishment. And it says it's a facility offering services such as tattooing, body piercing, or other body modification procedures in a sterile environment. That's their definition. Then I looked at, it's in chapter 6, the link there. I looked at the table of uses, and as you scroll down, it's near it's about midway, it's page 3 of 8. So there you go, just go down a little more. It's designated under commercial high and commercial, I think it's general, is what it is, let's see. Yeah, general commercial and commercial heavy. Heavy commercial, general commercial. They're both conditional use designations for that. So we'll come back to that in a minute. I will then note the downtown district, I just added it, and mixed use zone, they're both not permitted in neither of those zones. And you can see they're not permitted in the commercial neighborhood on this matrix. I then talked to the planning commission about what is a conditional use as it relates to Bountiful City, and we scratched at this a little bit. You know, how our conditional uses designate in other cities. And on that next link, if you'll go down, yep, that one, and then go to page 2, right there, determination, we talked about how cities determine how they apply the conditional use. And you can see articles A and B are matching language we have in our code and match a lot of what the state requires and what a lot of cities have as far as articulating what they're looking for. Basically, you have to, for a conditional use to be applied, and again, I always look to Lisa if she wants to correct me or add to it to make sure that I say it correctly, but you're looking for ways to mitigate detrimental effects so that the use could otherwise exist in that space if they can mitigate those impactful effects to the surrounding community, other businesses, et cetera, or there's a health, safety, welfare concern that's legitimately articulated. Otherwise, if they can achieve a mitigation, then it's basically like a permitted at that point, if they can reasonably achieve it. But The planning commission works as the ones that determine whether or not that can be achieved. You are the administrative review body in Centerville for those kind of requests. So you can see here in Bountiful specifically then, they have Article C, which talks about the application, and it says the location of the proposed use in relationship to other existing use in the general vicinity, the effects of the proposed use and accompanying improvements on existing developments in the general vicinity, and the appropriate buffering of uses in buildings, proper parking, traffic, circulation, use of building materials, landscaping, farming in the area. It's kind of like their way to sub-explore what kind of detrimental impacts they're looking at. And then they note in D that if they're not finding the information they seek or they want more information, they can request it in order to prove the conditional use permit granting opportunity to the city. So that'd be the best way to explain it. And then I went into, if you'll go back up to the key and click the link, Sydney, for me, then I pulled up the land use map. And this is really, really telling. Because if you look at this map, if you'll scroll in, the dark pink and the light pink, the dark pink is commercial heavy, and the dark pink is commercial general. And it's quite a lot of the city, which is really interesting. And if you think about the commercial districts, when you go into Bountiful and look at what we're seeing there, all those areas technically could have a conditional use permit request for a tattoo establishment in their community. So I thought that was interesting. And we talked about that at the last meeting. And again, planning commissioners that were present at the last meeting, if you want to add anything as I go along, feel free to do so.
They do have tattoo shops there. I just Googled them.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even know that, but,
you just found some pretty quick, huh?
yeah.
So there you go. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Almost all their commercial districts seem to facilitate the conditional use permit opportunity for a tattoo establishment. So interesting. Okay, and then if we'll go back, yep. Yeah, I'm having the same thing. There we go. Click back again, maybe. There we go, one more. There it is. Okay. Okay, so now let's go to Layton City. Yeah, if you click that. And this is on page 15, their definition. This one's a little more involved, but again, this one's interesting because it seems to line up more with what we've been discussing about the county and the state's definition of this, but they kind of lump in, which I think is kind of odd, but that's their call. They lump in some other things that aren't really tattooing, but they just classify it in that category.
And they're nasty.
Means the application of permanently depositing pigments not required for medical purposes into the human skin by use of a needle or other implement for the purpose of creating a mark, design, word, branding, scarification, and or body art placed on the skin. The implementation technique deposits color pigment below the epidermis into the dermis. So they more broadly categorize branding and scarification as tattooing by their definition, which seems to line up with what we've had educate to us in previous discussions about state and county ordinances. Then I looked at the land use matrix for that. So if you'll go down to page 11, the only category that Layton has acknowledged for a conditional use application is their commercial high district. And you'll see it's a conditional use designation. So as we now look at their, let's look at their conditional use real quick, and then we'll come back to where they apply that.
Are you gonna come back to the permanent cosmetics in Layton?
I didn't even want to, I hadn't reviewed that, but we certainly could go back.
Go
to
back,
that.
just go back to that same page.
You want to look at the matrix?
Well, I'm just noting for discussion's sake.
Oh, yeah.
Definition.
Oh,
They-
yeah, look at that.
They do it across the
Oh, yeah.
board almost as a permitted, which is,
Almost every zone.
I mean, surprising. It raises a host of the same issues we're grappling with,
Yeah.
but that's the way they've skinned that cat.
That is interesting. That's almost every zone. I didn't even look at that before. Good catch.
But
They
then
define-
But
they
then
def-
tattooing's only allowed in.
Correct. And
Commercial.
permanent cosmetics is defined as well up in the definitions, almost like we do.
Huh? Well, there you go. Well, I
Can you
appreciate
go back to that, please?
Do you want to see the definition?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you want me to go to tattooing or permanent
No,
cosmetic?
permanent cosmetics. PER.
Yep,
That is page.
it's right here. Yep.
Semi-permanent, interesting. I feel like it's,
Oh, yeah, it seems to match a lot of our language.
Well, semi-permanent would be like eyebrows and stuff. That's
It's
never
not.
permanent.
Oh, really? I
That's all
didn't know.
semi-permanent.
I didn't know that.
You have to get it redone like every couple of years.
Oh, well, that's, where's the tattoo you do not?
Yeah, that's interesting,
Shouldn't.
especially where they have it so broadly categorized, but tattoos is so limited. That's really fascinating.
It raises many of the similar issues, that
That's true, my mom's done it a lot.
they at least can argue that they haven't completely disallowed tattoos.
That's real fascinating.
Oh, microblading is considered permanent cosmetics. Interesting.
I'm sorry to derail your.
No, you're okay. If you want to keep looking at it, talking about it, I'm fine waiting, or if you want me to keep going, I can
I
go
was,
keep
I was
going.
just asking,
You're good. No, I actually appreciate it. I think that's really helpful, to what we're talking about. Okay, let's just look real quick at Layton City's conditional use code. If it'll pull up. Yep, I was afraid of that.
yep.
So again, going to statement, where is it? So first, yeah, right at the very first page, actually, yeah, no, go to the top, 1914-020. Because I just want to highlight this first, right there. So 2A and B, again, you see similar language. And then they talk about how it doesn't exempt you from following other standards of the code, okay? And now let's scroll down to the next spot where you were at. So you had 1480, go down one more. There it is. So then they have more distinct determinations and considerations that they go into. Again, kind of that sub-qualification of how they further define those two statements. And they say, the specific locations in harmony with the general intent purpose of the Layton City General Plan and the applicable zoning district regulations. It's necessary and desirable to provide a service facility which will contribute to the general well-being of the community and the neighborhood. Such use will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity, and conditions imposed by land use authority shall be based upon options described in this chapter or any special conditions or requirements as may be specified elsewhere in this title. So that's how they subcategorize it. And then they go, Layton is interesting, they go even further in 90 and give this like list of options specifically to the comprehensive planning characteristic of the zoning district. I won't read over A through I. Some things might apply even in our situation, but most don't. But there's a few things that might apply where we did follow a similar analysis. 2 is conditions relating to safety or persons of property. That one really wouldn't apply. That's more like some kind of land use risk or concern relative to a business practice. 3 is conditions related to health and sanitation. There was, I think it was this one. There was one of them. Oh, it wasn't this one. So yeah, this one again is tied to utilities, mostly specifically waste and drainage is what it looks like. Then 4, conditions relating to environmental concerns. And the only ones that I think might apply would be like for tattoo, maybe ejectional odors and noise, maybe. I don't know if they really have any real emissions, but if they did, maybe. But otherwise, nothing in there really seems to match either. So now let's look at, go up to the, if you would, send a research key back to that document, and then click this time the link to the Layton City zoning map. So this is now, let's look at their zoning map.
Wait, what?
Go down to research key body, yeah, that one. And then we're gonna have to do the fun little link, and then the little box will pop up once you go in, like it does, and all that good stuff. And then we'll want to zoom in just a little bit on this one. The key, if you were to click legend for a minute, you could, and then just drag the box over, go back to legend, and then scroll down a little bit once you do. There you go. CH, so we're looking at the white and red up-down bars. If you look on the map, as we get a little closer, their entire Main Street district, and there's even little sub-pockets
Right here.
scattered throughout the city that identify as or tattooing, which is interesting. So there's quite a bit of real estate in their community that affords that opportunity. Again, like we've discussed, and we discussed even at the last meeting, what kind of conditions would we even be talking about? And I'm not sure I have the answer to that, as we discussed in our last meeting, what that looks like, right? And that's, I think, the key of some of the comments that our city attorney has clarified and even brought up, is like, you really have to determine what are the detrimental impacts to the health, safety, and welfare as it relates to a conditional use if you're gonna apply that kind of a standard. So again, think about that as we talk about it. Now, we did go through a practice, which, me being a little naive, I did provide, if you go back to the packet, Sydney, our conditional use ordinance, and our conditional use ordinance has language in there that I found out through our last discussion in more detail that is concerning to the city from a legal perspective, because it gives a lot of deferential guidance that really should not be applicable to a conditional use in light of where our current state code goes with conditional uses. So we really have to come back to those two key statements that I kept talking about. That is in our code about detrimental impacts and mitigating detrimental impacts. And that is found in our code. I mean, I guess approval standard E3 would be probably somewhat okay, but there's that one where it talks about, there it is, it's Article D4 has some of that language in it, talking about reasonable conditions are proposed, can be imposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use in accordance. That's probably the strongest statement when you look at a conditional use in protecting the city's interest and as we make decisions on conditional uses. So clearly, if you want to hone in on anything in particular, planning commissioners that were present or those that weren't, as we look at our own conditional use permit, this leads to a whole separate discussion though, so I don't want to get too misleading into it, and that our conditional use language needs to be amended as well. And I know even going back to when Whitney was here, that was on the list she had talked to you about of things that we want to address. I know our legal staff has indicated that that should be a higher priority to look at as well. But for the purpose of today's discussion, it's kind of window dressing to the larger question is how do we want to proceed with the tattoo discussion. But I do want to make sure that we understand that even as staff and with legal guidance, we probably would try to target into that D4 language mostly on any future review of a conditional use where we'd explore it, whether it be tied to tattooing or other things in the future.
Can we go back to that? I mean, can we just look at this for a second?
Yeah, that layer there, that 4.
Which is the way we've been analyzing them, and it's the way it was explained tonight, that you have to establish detrimental impacts, and then you can only use conditions to mitigate those, but if there's no detrimental impacts, then you have to approve the conditional use permit. So as staff, even though some of these things are in our code, if those are the only things, then we would say, you know, our code isn't in compliance with state law and case law, and so we would advise that you find some detrimental impacts.
Yeah.
And reasonably mitigate, so, because we do have that language in here.
And so that then leads now into, now we can get to the meat of all this window stuff we've talked about, in that we have an ordinance which has been included in your document as it's the third document in the pack, going up to the top, Sydney. Down, up one, ordinance 2025. And there's the recommendation from city staff relative to this matter, and the recommendation on the zoning matrix, and I had put in the zoning matrix, which is, this is just the language, but then the table of uses, which is the next one, actually shows it. I had put in C, but I put it in a question mark because I didn't know if we wanted to do conditional or permitted. This is where we probably would be looking to the planning commission for some guidance on what you would like that final form to look like, where you would like it. Are we comfortable with the idea of as being recommended in the industrial very high, in the industrial high, and only in the CVH plan development overlay areas of Legacy Crossing, which would be the Legacy Crossing Apartments area by where the Larry Miller Theater is, and across the street at Legacy Trails by Maverick, in those areas? Or we wanted to be a little more tight and say IH and IVH, where are we feeling we want to go, and what designation should it be? That's the direction we're looking for from the Planning Commission, I think, with this discussion tonight. And then further, once we identify that, are we ready then with some of these changes that might be discussed tonight to take it forward to a future public hearing advertisement and a meeting to kick that off. Because obviously, once we do, we have a pretty good understanding of what's going to happen with that conversation.
Yep.
So are we there?
Maybe if I can just add
Yeah,
for
go ahead,
those
Lisa.
proposed, yeah, I did like that map that we have of the west side. So these zones are all proposed for the west of I-15. And, you know, in my mind, like if we just limit these to our industrial zones, is that really compatible with those uses? And we do have 2 spots on the legacy apartments. There are 2 retail pads that have not built out despite tax incentives and things like that. But anyway, yes, there's 2 here that could be built out. And then there's also a couple retail or other pads in Legacy Crossing that they've brought forward multiple ideas. But anyway, so my thinking was that if, you know, if those develop out in retail or something like that, that a tattoo or body art facility, permanent cosmetics might be compatible with those as well. But just the thought behind that. The other thought that I had just in this discussion, the way we defined permanent cosmetics previously was we defined it and then we said it's personal care. But we may want to think about, in looking, Layton puts permanent cosmetics as a line item in their commercial table of uses. And that would solve a lot of our problems, because remember, we had to make all these amendments to our home occupation because personal care is allowed everywhere. And so I think maybe as staff, since this is just discussion, next time we may want to look at pulling that out. What's the impact of that? But pulling it out of personal care, you know, putting it back in there as its own line item, and then also having body art facility. But those 2 types of uses would be allowed in different zones, as you could, similar to Layton. I feel like that's kind of what Centerville was going. I mean, we've already allowed permanent cosmetics on Main Street, which is our commercial medium, but allowing body art facilities in our industrial and maybe some of our planned developments.
Okay, so I'm confused, because the people that came in originally, which started this whole conversation, you had just said that we've allowed the permanent cosmetics there?
Yes, they wanted to broaden that to tattoos.
Yeah, they've been doing permanent cosmetics for a long
Well,
time.
permanent cosmetics is, like, as defined by Layton? Like
No,
what we
as
just-
defined by Centerville City, we have a definition of permanent cosmetics.
Can you pull that
And
up, please?
it is in our definition, and then it says, and then under personal care, it lists, you know, beauty salons, whatever this archaic language is, plus permanent cosmetics, or includes permanent cosmetics.
Go-
But what I'm saying is we should maybe pull it
Cindy,
back out of
go-
that, but
go to
permanent,
ordinance
personal care
2025
is allowed in your commercial medium.
I think she has it up one more. I think it's in there, even though, yeah,
Okay, permanent.
even though it's being amended, it's in there.
Right, typical uses include beauty and barber shops, permanent cosmetics, custom tailoring, and seamstress shops, blah, blah, blah. The term excludes tattoos, though. And so what we're proposing with this is taking out tattoo and referencing body art facilities. That's the direction the state has gone, that's the direction Davis County has gone, which both regulate body art facilities. So that's my recommendation for Centerville, using these new terms. But yeah, just maybe looking at permanent, we are also, those amendments to permanent, the definition of permanent cosmetics really came about from the city council's discussion and maybe some of the planning, but mainly the city council's discussion of the previous application, and said, wait a minute, one council member suggested we broaden this, because there are some other uses for this with other things, and so it's a little bit broader than our previous one, but still, it's permanent cosmetics, which is generally a personal care kind of line item, so. I'm not trying to confuse things, I'm just saying, we already allow permanent cosmetics under the category of personal care. I would like to have staff maybe look at just having it be its own line item. We already have a definition, but let's make a line item. I really like Layton's, you know, because obviously they allowed that in 5 zones, and they allow body art in 1, and it's a conditional use. That's kind of what we're proposing as well.
And I like that a lot. I think we need to have better definition, more like Layton, on the permanent cosmetics. And then the body art thing. And we have to have, we not only need to, but we have to have categories for tattoos specifically?
Well,
First state code? Not.
I feel like a used record here, but
I'm
as I've
sorry,
said,
because I'm not
in the
understanding.
9th and 11th Circuit, they have said that tattooing and tattoos are a form of free speech, and even the act of tattooing. And so they are protected by the First Amendment. It doesn't mean that cities can't regulate time, place, and manner, which we can. But again, Utah is in the 10th Circuit, and so I wasn't able to find any cases in Utah saying, oh, this is, this is a violation of the First Amendment, unconstitutional, city, you have to allow it. But in the 9th and 10th Circuit, the cities were told, you need to allow it basically, allow it somewhere, because a complete ban is a restriction on free speech, an unreasonable restriction on free speech. And so that's why I'm just recommending, given the fact, because there are a lot of cities in Utah that don't have any regulations, or they're like Centerville's where we prohibit them. You can do that. It doesn't mean that it's legally sustainable. It could be challenged. And so,
Yeah. It's better
our
just to-
recommendation as staff is allow it in your industrial zone or somewhere where you think it would be compatible with those uses. Like I said, Layton only had one zone. We're proposing 3 here, so you could limit it, but we also heard a lot of comments about, different uses and feelings, and what is the detrimental impact of these? I mean, from a legal standpoint, what is it? Is it hours of operation? Or is it the kind of people that walk in? Those are things we can't
Yeah,
make
that's
decisions on.
discrimination, yeah.
So, but I do think that you can, I know there's disagreement among attorneys, but I do think that you can make this distinction between permanent cosmetics. There's a number of cities and regulations that do that and allow that on Main Street along with our, beauty and barber shops. But the tattooing is just proposed in these industrial or PDO.
And I'm sorry you feel like a broken record.
No, it's fine.
But honestly, Lisa, I get a little bit overwhelmed in my mind. I'm super visual, and I do really, really well with like looking
Yes.
at something. And I have this in my head without a legal background, and so I'm
Right.
trying to like process it all. And so sometimes I actually get confused as to what exactly are you wanting us to do?
Yes, and I appreciate the question. Actually, I apologize for saying that, but
No, it's-
I appreciate the question because I do think people hear, when I say my recommendation is to allow them somewhere, they hear that as we have to. I think it's risky if we don't, but it doesn't mean we have to. Like if the city council wants to take that risk, it's not clear in the 10th Circuit in Utah, which is what we look at. But I think that it is risky, and so that's our recommendation, is allow it somewhere.
And I was gonna add to that, that even if the planning commission, we go through the whole process, we still don't know what the city council will ultimately do. with it.
Right,
Too.
right.
And so that, we as staff are playing that game, that you might be on board with something, we get city council, and to Lisa's point, they might say, we don't want any of it.
Yeah. But I do think the legal standards are pretty clear. I mean, reading the cases from the other circuits, it's good legal analysis, and I suspect that, our circuit would read it the same way, but it's not 100%,
Okay.
because it hasn't been decided.
And then last time you had said you recommended that we do in permitted instead of conditional uses.
Yes,
Are you
looking at,
still-
well, yeah, I am concerned about what detrimental impacts the planning commission, because the planning commission is tasked with conditional use permits. But I think if we clean up our conditional use permit ordinance and make sure we're not looking at these subjective factors and saying, okay, planning commission, you need to come up with detrimental impacts for this type of use, I can live with that. And also looking at Mike's research of what other cities have done, they're saying, okay, we're gonna allow these, but we're gonna make them a conditional use. We just have to make sure that we, have a good conditional use permit ordinance and that our planning commission is trained on the legal standards of those. And I'd be okay. So, yeah, thank you for that question
For-
as well.
Let me just try this on for size. If I'm playing the role of a commissioner looking at a tattoo shop and trying to find a detrimental impact, these are the only things that come to mind. The foot traffic, right? Not the type of person I'm talking about like legitimately the stream. And I just don't see the stream of people being all that much.
Yeah. Or you say hours of operation, but
And the
again, with
second-
conditional use permits, you can restrict hour, time, place, and manner, hours of operation, location.
But this is where I was headed with that, is that, okay, so let's talk about hours of use. When we've talked hours of use before, it's because of problems with deliveries. And I don't see in a tattoo parlor a legitimate reason to restrict their hours beyond what we already restrict everybody's hours on.
True, I'm just saying, like, if they had been, for instance, approved on Main Street.
Sure.
I think on Main Street, we do restrict certain hours and, so that might be something, but you're right, over in the industrial zone, how do we show that it's a negative impact, that people
Yeah,
are coming
Maverick's
in when
open.
we allow,
Yeah.
most businesses
So,
don't
so
know.
there's hours, there's deliveries, there's foot traffic, there's no noise that's gonna go outside of the building. They're not doing outdoor storage, they're not doing noxious odors.
And health and safety is
Health
regulated
and
by the
safety
county.
is somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
So when I get to that point in my mind, I think intellectually, why are we not doing permitted? I don't want to have to handle this. I just don't. Because I don't want to
It's gonna
sit
be a
here.
rare,
I just don't want to sit here and be like, okay, well, I guess we're going through a whole conditional use staff report. There are no detrimental impacts.
And you have a public hearing and a
Yeah,
room full of people.
it's kind of a waste of staff's time.
I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Well, my question to your point, like a CUP over the permitted, Lisa was talking about hours. We had talked before about, obviously, we're not gonna have a business like that around schools, right, or church or whatever, but over there, and you talked about Maverick, 24 hours. We also have apartments around there with
That's
little
true,
kids. If it's conditional use permit, can you say, well, you need to shut down by 10 or 9 or whatever, but if permitted, they could be like Maverick 24/7? I'm
if they're
just
permitted, they're just
asking.
subject to all the other regulations, so I don't know which zones have hours of
I'd say I don't know
operation
that we
limitations off the top of
get
my
that
head, but
granular.
we do have a noise ordinance, well,
Yeah.
yeah, even the noise
But
ordinance
the
wouldn't.
apartments are right by there.
So,
I don't think we have hours of operation, maybe.
They're
Truck
behind
drivers
it
that go
over
in and
there.
out of there all the time.
Okay,
one
so
other, one
let-
more, sorry, one more thing that I thought about, I did meet with some city attorneys, in Davis County. We're trying to get together more often and talk about things, and I brought up, this, tattoo body art establishment issue and had said, look, we could only find that Bountiful and Layton have anything addressing these, and, so Bountiful and Layton talked about their ordinances and said, oh yeah, we allow them pretty much everywhere in our commercial, and, but one other city, unnamed, had mentioned, oh, we just consider that this use. So by zoning code interpretation by the zoning administrator, they're just saying, this is this.
No. No.
So, anyway, I thought that was really interesting. So just because we read someone else's code, they might have just said, oh, this is personal care, or whatever. And I thought, oh, I hadn't even thought of that, but no, you're right. We're not going there because Centerville does have tattoo and permanent cosmetics, so we couldn't make that jump, but anyway, just thought that was interesting. So there might be other cities that allow it by code interpretation. They probably have really broad categories.
And they just haven't had anyone want to go to that city yet. Is that what you're saying?
They what?
They haven't had any tattoo
No,
establishments?
they probably
They-
do.
they might.
do,
It's just
because they
under-
just interpret it, oh, that's fine, that's.
It might be
this.
even in a definition somewhere.
Personal care
granular in the
services.
code that might be a word that's in there and they just don't have a definition for tattoo explicitly in their code. Other than it's called
Like
out
when the
somewhere.
permanent cosmetic first came in, maybe it could have been considered beauty or, barbershop.
Yeah.
It would be like a Sydney in another municipality looking at a business license and saying, yep, that works here. That's what it would be like. So I am very opposed to that because I do.
No, I'm not
get the
suggesting it, I'm
backlash.
just saying that maybe more cities allow these
They just don't
types
know it.
of
I didn't
uses
think
that
about that,
you
but you're
wouldn't
right.
know.
Yeah, you're right.
I hadn't even thought of. So anyway, sorry, diversion.
Is it a complete non-starter at the city council level? I'm asking you to read the tea leaves, to do a conditional in commercial very high.
My suggestion has been, I would love to have two different commercial very high. One on Parish Lane, our gateway, one on the west, which is 1250 West Industrial.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, our commercial very high spans east and west industrial, our gateway, our, you know.
And I even think about to that question, the future general plan and the land use master plan update and how that applies to, I was just thinking about that as we were talking a few minutes ago. That has some application to what we're talking about, because if we go and change the land use master plan, and we start to change the uses, does that affect how we interpret? Right now, we say the west of I-15, but if we start changing the uses of some of that industrial and it looks different and we do get housing or other retail in there, it's gonna change the nature of where that tattooing is allowed. I mean, body art, excuse me, is allowed, so.
But anyway, I don't know, but
Okay,
suspect not.
So then are you saying don't
That's a big
say,
area of red.
that was my,
And it abuts residential.
I'm with Lisa,
It's
I would lean against it.
yep.
lean against what?
Doing it.
Commercial
in-
very
Starting it
high.
into commercial very high is another.
Over here.
Just because we think the city council is gonna turn it down? Is that what?
No, just, I mean, if you look, it
just
is a
gets
large
messy.
part of the city.
Yeah.
And like I said, it abuts residential, it's in our gateway, and we are trying to allow this use, but it doesn't have to be, you know, on your main street or your gateway.
And I think to that point too, that doesn't mean too, we couldn't reevaluate it in 3 or 4 years too,
Right.
if we have it in code and see how it's working.
Yeah, just kind of.
So are you suggesting then industrial very high? Am I confused? I mean, I know I'm a little bit confused, but,
Those
What did you
zones
say?
on the,
Industrials, all, pretty much the grays.
The dark
The dark-
grays the dark grays are industrial very high, the light grays are industrial high, and then the area with the overlay zone is this little,
Kind of brown.
this area right in here on the,
All that
so
dark,
it'll allow.
Advocates, right?
It would be allowed on the two pads right there, exactly, and it would be allowed if you go just to the right, all the way to the end, and then down, yep, those two. Those two have not yet been developed, or those 4 parcels are what's left to develop in those projects.
does the right development group property on the corner get it too, because I think that's in PDO.
No.
Oh, you're right.
Theirs
it's
is
not PDO.
expired.
Yeah, and you're right.
And I'm not saying,
right. No, you're
the
right.
code does
My
not say
mistake.
all PDOs, it only says Legacy
You're right.
Apartment PDO and Legacy Crossing
You're right,
PDO.
that's why it doesn't apply to that property, I forgot that. That's right.
So even if somebody else wants to do a PDO, like, I think there's Chad Salmons or
potential.
Craig Salmons might be a PDO up there in the Shorelands Commerce Park.
Yeah,
But only
you're right.
those two,
You're right.
because they also make sense from a planning I think that it would be.
and, I can't remember his name. He's gonna be building the apartments right next to the megaplex. What's his name? That guy that came in and,
JF Cap, are you talking about Mitch Vance, JF Capital,
maybe
maybe?
that guy. But that's not those 2 parcels of land that you've got your arrow.
It
on.
is, but they've gone in a different direction.
Oh,
Glenn Gersberger of, maybe that,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was Glenn,
They,
yeah.
well, first they went, yeah, commercial office, retail office, and then they went multifamily, and now they're back to the drawing board.
oh, okay, so, okay.
Yeah.
Multifamily is having a hard time building out because of financing.
Yep, it is.
Okay.
We had the same problem with that upper corner parcel, not to get too far off, but that upper
Yep.
corner parcel, they backed off of that there as well. Yep. But yeah, I think you're talking about Glenn.
But I think as staff, we would like to have your input. This has been really good discussion, this meeting and the last meeting, as well as at the council. I think it's a really interesting topic, you know, from a legal standpoint, from a planning standpoint. But if you want to give us some direction, as I said, I mean, we have a proposed ordinance, but it was really just to get some direction.
Yeah, we can,
And
Let's-
the direction, I think, is, you know, whether you want the permanent cosmetics on a line item in itself, and then we could do away with some of these amendments to the
Let's move to that phase. So I'll lead out and everybody jump on with what you think may be different. So I'm biased, clearly, because I used to work for Layton. I do like how they skinned the cat. It raises some concerns, but it ameliorates almost all of the rest of them. So I would say it's worth considering mirroring a lot of what they do.
My question to that, Chair, is, what would we want to have as liberal of a zoning acceptance? Or are we talking just all like commercial industrial zones? What do you think?
Yeah, so let me jump on that. I am inclined, if I were waving magic wands, I would make this a permitted use, and I would make it for all of the industrial zones, including medium, even though we don't have any, and then for the PDOs. That's my inclination.
Or are you talking about body art facilities?
Sorry, I got
Okay.
mixed up, yeah, with permanent cosmetics.
Permanent cosmetics, we sort of already have,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I was wondering.
And so you'd be looking at all of the same zones that we have, personal services.
Okay, so on its own line item, just do what we're already doing.
Yeah, just keep
Okay.
it the same.
That makes sense.
But I think redefine, I think we need to have better definition on permanent cosmetics, like more like Layton's. I think ours is
Well,
not.
and you still want to follow what Lisa has proposed, I mean.
Yeah, there are proposed edits, but that's from the direction of the council, which I think probably will pass. I mean, they had made a motion to amend that definition when there was a discussion on the prior one, and it might have passed. They wanted to make these amendments, but
That's
then
true.
it was denied.
I,
So looking at that definition there, is that,
I think this added on to what it was before, but I think that still needs to mesh a little bit better, more with Layton. I feel like that was really clear.
Okay,
That's
so
just
look
my
at
opinion.
Layton's definition of permanent cosmetics.
Yes,
Okay.
that's my opinion.
Other thoughts from commissioners for direction for staff?
I have lots of thoughts, but I mean, I don't understand what the difference is between permanent
don't
cosmetics and
either.
tattooing. I don't understand why we can't have it in all commercial areas. Like, I just don't, it seems ridiculous to me. It's not a big deal. You don't see anything going on inside. I've been in multiple tattoo shops. They're clean, they're nice, the people are great. They have fancy lights outside. It's cute. Like, they usually make them look really good. I don't understand why this is even a problem, why it's not all just together.
Let me jump on there and add my voice to that comment. I agree with you.
Yeah.
The technology is the exact same, the regulation is the exact same, the safety
same.
risks are the exact same. So who are we to differentiate between whether or not the aesthetics of an eyeshadow is somehow more acceptable
Yeah.
than somebody putting on a half sleeve?
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem. We have people who are morally opposed to it, and we've got voting bodies to have to deal with. And so the way that Layton skinned the cat is that they balanced those two. It may be challengeable, may not be challengeable. I think Lisa noted attorneys will differ on whether or not permanent cosmetics are so akin to tattoos that they ought to be defined to be the same. And if we're going to get an ordinance passed that
I mean, we're here to
protects us
appease
from
the
a
masses,
constitutional.
right? Like,
Not necessarily, no. Sometimes we have to tell the masses, you guys are just dead wrong.
yeah,
We have to listen to them.
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, that is our goal, right?
Right.
I mean, our
But
goal is
if the
to,
masses were to say to us, you cannot allow tattoos. in
then
the
obviously, yeah,
center,"
we come back with
We've got-
legality. We
we've got a
can't,
problem.
yeah.
But I guess this is the sugar on the jagged pill. That's the way I see
It's the
it.
way to make the most amount of people happy.
So,
Right?
even though I share exactly what you're saying.
So, clarification for me then, we're gonna have a permanent cosmetics, I'm not ignoring your point,
No, you're
but
fine.
kind of to this point. Permanent cosmetics, we're also gonna have a definition of body art, and then we're also gonna have a definition of tattoos.
no, tattoo
No,
would
we're
be
taking
out.
out tattoo.
Taking out tattoos
Because it's an old
completely.
reference.
It would be that definition that she has up
So
for body art
tattoo would now be
facility,
body art.
as it's shown there.
And then permanent cosmetics is a separate entity.
You're right, that we would work, sounds like with Layton, if that's the will. of the
But I mean, any gender can go about getting permanent cosmetics, correct? That's it to
Well,
me.
yeah, it's
And I mean, that may be,
Genderless.
I know, but I'm just saying,
But I mean, in that thing.
I'm gonna keep my mouth.
Let's not unpack that.
Well, I'm just saying that people could have, a ruckus for that.
I do like that we have in there, because that was really, to my core, very bothersome, because I have seen it, videos of it being done, the branding and the scarification.
Yeah, we-
Oh, yeah.
That's
Davis
horrifying
County
to me.
prohibits it.
So, yeah. But per the county,
Which is interesting, because Layton.
can you repeat that?
Davis County prohibits branding and scarf.
I just.
Even though Layton has it,
Yeah, that's what I was just
that it's
realizing.
acceptable
It's
in
their
Layton?
code. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I see a valid
mean, we
reason
don't-
to prohibit those outright.
Oh, for sure.
Health, safety, and welfare of the side effects of branding, even cold branding, are so detrimental that I don't think that they should be practiced in our city.
So I like the verbiage of that in the body art.
It's a lot more clean. Mm-hmm. We don't wanna do like self-harm and things of that nature.
No, I've branded cattle. It is not a pleasant thing. It is,
It smells really
You
bad.
can do it at home. You can. There's nothing to stop you from doing it at
but
home.
you, yes, I suppose one could. Don't invite me.
Anyways, moving on.
okay.
Any
So-
questions?
So, what I'm hearing, do you want us then to make the amendments and bring it back again, just to kind of get that final tweak of the final
I think
product
we're,
of it
I think
before
we're
we set
good,
the
aren't we
public
good?
hearing?
We're not good?
Is that what we're
I
hearing?
would like to see it again.
Oh, okay, let's do it again.
Oh, you mean, I would like to see it as a motion.
So a public hearing, notice it for action.
Do you feel like,
So if you're ready for us, if everybody supports what you've said, and we present it and prepare it that way, would you be comfortable with us then taking it for public hearing?
Well, hold on, because the thing that we haven't agreed upon are the zones.
Okay.
So I would like to take a look at the map again.
And if we massage permanent cosmetics, you would probably see a newer definition of it, so there's that.
okay, let's do it that way then.
Wanna do that?
One more work session,
One
basically.
more? Okay.
Okay,
And then we have
And then after that, the public hearing to
Got
adopt
it.
to forward.
we send out,
but then with a determination to decide where we want that, if we want
because
it.
now everybody's heard it.
If there's a
Different commissioners.
counterpoint to your comment, I think it'd be valuable to at least share it, so we as staff know relative, because it sounds like, excuse me, you might have a concern about the designation on the table of uses, whether it's permitted or conditional, is that what you're saying?
Well,
Well, I
that
think
was
the
Lisa's
zones.
point last time. She said it would, I mean, from a legal point of view, she would prefer to have it be permitted.
Right.
Right? So we're deciding, or we're discussing, not
Right.
deciding anything.
But well, that's one of those things that you can discuss substantively when we have the public hearing. You don't have to decide now. We're just trying to draft an ordinance, and for me, putting a C or an N or a P,
Yeah.
Not a
you know,
thing.
we're not drafting code by committee. That's my hesitant, but these are easy enough. What zones, what, but if you want us to revise the definitions, which you've said, we'll look at what Layton has done, put them apart, but essentially putting permanent cosmetics in all the zones that it's already allowed in right now, you can revisit that once you see it in writing, because things are different once I see it in writing.
Okay.
And then I think we'll just come back with the same, maybe if we change our mind, we can put more Cs, but come back with a
Yeah,
recommendation.
for permanent cosmetics, we can match personal services, and we can bring back the table of uses for now as it is, but we have noted that the chair has evidence maybe changing that to permitted. I guess that would be in the.
I would be in favor of permitted, but I also recognize
Yeah.
that the viability of that getting all the way up through the town, or the city council is probably closer to not than yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, but here's the thing, I am also of the persuasion that most conditional use permits are supposed to be, or ought to be, not supposed to be, delegated to staff anyways. I don't think that we should be involved very much, because most planning commissioners think that it's time to muck around when it's not.
Okay.
So, but again, I have my opinions.
Okay, so here, just to summarize the orders, and you just all can give us a consensus thumbs up. What I'm hearing is update permanent cosmetics, give it a new category to match personal services, same zoning designations as established for personal services for now. Update the permanent cosmetics definition to be an amalgam of what we have and what Layton City has. and then bring back everything the way it otherwise has been presented tonight for further discussion. Does that sound right?
Right?
Okay.
Bing, bang, boom. Thank you. Let's move on to Community Development Director's report.
Boy, now my, I had it kind of planned out. So we'll bring this back at the next meeting. We are working on the PDO, PUD language. We've actually, in light of our discussion at the last meeting and further discussion internally, we're trying to determine what is the best way to represent that. We do still think that there is a concern relative to the PUD ordinance as it is currently established, where it's so simple and difficult to apply. So I'm just letting you know, we are still working on that, but we didn't feel like it was ready to come back to this meeting. And it may not even be ready to come back at the next meeting, I guess is where I'm going. The other thing I will note, we have received recently a couple of zoning map amendment requests. So those will be forthcoming at some near future meetings. And I'm trying to think, are there any other applications I'm missing?
Possibly a site plan approval.
Yeah, you'll have likely probably not the next meeting, but the meeting thereafter, there'll be conceptual site plan approval coming your way as well. So kind of just heads up the things that are forthcoming. And I would finally say that surprisingly, land use is very busy in Centerville. You think with some of the economic challenges that are out there, that things aren't happening, but they're definitely happening.
We currently, right now, sitting on, like, in the office, have 18 land use applications, which is really nice. Varying between subdivisions, minor subdivisions, to site plans, to rezones, zoning map amendments. So there's a lot of stuff going on, even in spite of
Yeah,
adversity.
real interesting. And then I guess the last thing I would note is the city council, I believe the city manager told me will be discussing the tentative budget at their meeting on May 6th, if you're interested in following that, so.
Thank you.
There you go.
Excellent, thank you very much. Moving on to item D, minutes. Does anybody have any proposed amendments to the minutes from April 9th?
I reviewed them, they looked good to me.
I'll accept a motion.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from April 9th. With no changes.
I'll second it.
We got a first and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, just off the record, obviously you do have shirts in the lanyard that have been provided by our administrative team.